Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So if you've been kind of following along my journey with like Pepperdine and my schooling and all of that, this is kind of another one of those videos in that series, I guess. I'm going to be talking about my practicum experience, or like the internship part of the schooling, and what that experience has been like for me and what it entails and all of that. So let's get into the video. So first, as many of you may know, I attend Pepperdine University, but it is an online program and I live in Chicago. Finding an internship site was an absolute nightmare. I made a video kind of talking about that already, so I'll link it down below. But at the very last second, I did find a site and I've been working there since January, so this is just kind of an update on how it's been going and what I have been doing during that time, I guess. So my practicum location mainly works with children and teens, but we also do work with adults. A lot of it is individuals who have gone through severe trauma situations, especially those who have dealt with gun violence and stuff like that. So it's definitely pretty heavy work, but I think that it's been a really good experience and a really good opportunity for me, especially just kind of starting out and I guess starting with something pretty intense right off the bat. I was quite nervous about it, but I think that it has made me more confident in, I guess, handling other situations. So my average day, well, there isn't really necessarily like an average day because I think it is pretty much all over the place. I usually don't do practicum work on Mondays and Fridays aside from maybe responding to text messages or emails. So Tuesday through Thursday is when I do the base of my work, and most of my work I do from home. I would say I work probably anywhere from like 4 to 5 hours a day, and usually that consists of seeing clients and then also doing session prep. And then the other part of it is kind of more like the back end research documentation part of it, which includes me doing research on different interventions or techniques to implement during sessions, and then writing notes from the sessions that I had that day or the previous day. There's also finding different resources for clients, such as like food, shelter, legal services, clothes. If you have a client that needs help in those areas, it's kind of part of your responsibility to help them in any way you can, find the resources. There's definitely a lot more note-taking and research than I thought there was going to be, but it's, as I see now, that's definitely just part of the job. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a part I enjoy as much as getting to actually see and interact with clients, but I do like that when you do those things is somewhat flexible. Obviously you have to get them done on a time limit, but you know, sometimes I end up doing those things at night or early in the morning, or you know, I don't have to necessarily do them between certain hours of the day. The hardest thing for me so far has been learning how to balance the practicum and school. I knew it was going to be difficult, and I think I finally, after a few months, gotten into a better flow of how to do that. It's hard because since the internship work includes so much writing and documentation, then you also have to do all the papers and readings and everything for school. It becomes a lot, and then it also becomes quite repetitive at times. So it's definitely not easy to manage both, and I'd say being in grad school and then also working as a clinical intern are both very stressful in their own ways. So when you're kind of handling those both at the same time, it does get pretty overwhelming. Luckily, I have a really great supervisor who, you know, allows me to take time if I need it, so that's been extremely helpful. During my first week of starting at the practicum, I really just did training. And then during the second week, I started doing initial intakes, like just phone intakes. So if people call in to request for therapy, we first do a phone intake, and then if after we get all that information, we send it off, one of the therapists will pick up the case and then contact them, and then you do like the initial intake in the session, which is just definitely a lot deeper, more questions. But by the third week, I was working with a client alongside another therapist, so I was pretty much just observing for the first few sessions. And then the fourth week is when I got my own client that I started seeing on my own. As of right now, I have 4 clients and I'm probably about to pick up a 5th one. That is the typical, I guess, caseload for an intern at my location. Kind of varies from location to location because what you're expected to do and how long the sessions are expected to be is a little bit different. I was definitely very nervous for seeing clients. The thing that I was most nervous about is implementing interventions and like knowing which interventions to implement. I kind of thought that you'd have to know that or do that in the moment. And although that it's helpful, you know, if you have tools in the back of your mind, as I said, kind of doing that session prep prior to meeting with the client, it can be really helpful because you already have like a list of things that you could use if you need them. But I found that a lot of it is really just being there and listening to the client and validating their feelings and concerns. There's definitely a spot for interventions in therapy, of course, but I would say that that's not necessarily the main focus of every single session, in which I thought that it would be. But I have found, both from doing therapy sessions and then also being in therapy myself, that sometimes if you just focus on like, okay, so I have these interventions that I want to try with you, it's not as helpful as actually just letting the client talk, because sometimes you get to deeper things and then you can connect those things and you can find a cause, and from that cause you can find a solution, and it's just more of a natural process versus kind of forcing it in. As far as kind of the pros and the cons of my practicum experience, the pros are it has been very flexible. I mean, probably as flexible as I could have asked for. The location itself, the main office is pretty far away from where I live, and I haven't had to go in person to that office at all yet. They have an administrative office that's a little bit closer. It's still about like a 30 to 45 minute drive, and I have gone there for like in-person trainings and such, but it has been extremely helpful to not have to commute on multiple levels, so I'm very grateful for that. Also, as I kind of mentioned, I've had a very supportive supervisor, which I think is huge. She's never like pressured me or judged me for anything that I've done or any questions that I had, and I think that is just, you don't realize how important that is until you actually get into this position. And everyone at the site too has been very open and welcoming and helpful, so overall that has been a good experience. I would say that the negative things would just be, first of all, just trying to find a practicum site. Once I found this one, everything ran pretty smoothly after that, but just the process of getting here was miserable. But as far as the site, I would say that the only negatives are that the office is so far away, because that kind of limits, you know, what clients I can take and if I could go in person. And also, I mean, you kind of have to expect this at a lot of like nonprofit organizations, but the clients aren't always consistent. I have some that definitely like show up every week on time, but I'd say a good half of them don't. Usually they just forget that we even had a session scheduled, and sometimes if you call them, they'll like jump on the session, but sometimes they don't, like they're off doing other things. So that's been a little frustrating in kind of keeping that consistency and getting the hours that you need. But as I said, I think that's pretty common at most places like this, because the clients aren't always super dedicated to therapy. Also, sometimes they have, so much going on in their lives and in their minds that they can't necessarily keep a straight schedule and show up on time all of the time. So it's understandable, but it can still get frustrating from like the therapist's perspective. As far as the future, I just really hope that things keep going as well as they are. It also is possible that I could work here as a full-time employee after I graduate. And I think that I definitely strongly consider that. My biggest hesitation would just be they require full-time employees to go into the office 2 days a week. So I would have to make that commute, and the drive is about an hour and a half. So there and back, it would be like total 3 hours of commuting a day. And the likelihood of me only having to go in 2 days a week is kind of low, because I would be banking on the fact that all of my in-person clients would be on those 2 days. So yeah, I don't know how realistic that is. However, I do really, really like this organization and what they stand for. It also seems that they really care about their employees and avoiding burnout, like giving time off when you need it and respecting your time and space and everything. So yeah, I hope that maybe something works out where I can make it work, make that commuting distance work. My boyfriend works right in downtown Chicago, and he also has to go into the office, so there really isn't a good solution for us, because if we moved closer to my office, then that would just make his commute an hour and a half long. So yeah, essentially I just hope that something works out and I'm able to stay at this location. Anyway, that's just kind of my little update on how that's been going. I know that some people have kind of reached out to me and asked me about the practicum process. So I just wanted to give that update, and if you guys have any more questions, put them in the comments, or you can DM me on Instagram. But if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see future videos, please hit that subscribe button below. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.